My name is Chris Arnold, and on behalf of the Bob and Alicia Woodrick Diversity Learning Center, welcome to Grand Rapids Community College, and we're pleased to have you here for our 17th annual Diversity Lecture Series. And this has just been an amazing year of speakers, and we thank you for your support. And I just kind of want to get a show of hands of how many of you out there is this your first lecture? Okay, so fair amount. And how many of you have been to more than one lecture here? Great. Well, we thank you for your support. And it is such an honor to have Miss Naomi Wolf with us here this evening, and she is just an amazing role model for all of us. I'd like to just take a moment to acknowledge some individuals in our audience, our Board of Trustees who work very hard for our college and our community and continue their support of our diversity initiatives. Ms. Terry Hanlon, Dr. Richard Reiskamp, Dr. Richard Stewart, and our board chair, Mr. Richard Verberg. Thank you all for being here. And this series really would not be possible without the support of our sponsors. Our diversity champions include the Nokomis Foundation and Steelcase, and Ms. Deb Bailey, thank you for all your support. Mary Ellis, are you here yet? I know she's here somewhere, but thank you to the Nokomis Foundation. And our diversity advocates include Aquinas College, the Center for the Education of Women at the University of Michigan, Varnum Law, and Warner Norcross and Judd. And our diversity partners include Amway, Davenport University, Fountain Street Church. I really want to thank Fountain Street Church. They've been a wonderful partner to us for the lecture series. And not just for the lecture series, but for all that they do to support our community. Thank you, Fountain Street Church. And Pastor Wooden, I know you're here around here somewhere. Thank you for all your support. Oh, he's waving in the back. Thank you. And again, I just want to acknowledge Michigan Radio and SMG Management, DeVos Place. And we're so thankful for all of our supporters and friends which are listed in your program. And for those of you who are interested in making a donation, we're happy to accept donations, and you can do that at the information table. And then I would like to acknowledge our diversity team for their continuing commitment, and a special thank you to our Diversity Learning Center staff, Jennifer Smith, Tamber Bustins, Kathleen Owens, and our student, London Johnson. And thank you for all the volunteers and our GRCC media team. And again, Fountain Street and the staff here, Melissa, Gary, and David for hosting us here. And for those of you who parked in one of the GRCC ramps, you can pick up a parking pass, and that'll get you out for a discounted rate tonight. And then if you can please take a moment to fill out your evaluation. Your opinion is very important to us, or if there's a speaker that you would like to have us consider bringing, please do provide your feedback. And if you'd like to be included on our email list, include your email address and you'll get updates from the center and different activities supporting our community. And Ms. Naomi Wolf will host a Q&A session and a book signing after the lecture. And please, we'd appreciate if you would not take any photos during the lecture, once the lecture begins. And again, this is our 17th year, and we're so proud of the history here of offering diverse voices to help engage our community in global and local viewpoints. Naomi Wolf is an author and is often described as a spokesperson for the third wave of feminist movement. In addition to her writings and actions regarding gender equity and social forces, she's also urging new energy to protect and guarantee our basic freedoms through citizens' responsibility and participation. And now I'd like to just introduce a member of the Young Women for Change of Kent County, and that is Miss Allison Arnold. She is a junior at Grand Rapids City High School, and she will share a few words with you about Young Women for Change. And following Allison, we will have Miss Marianne Lacerte introduce our speaker tonight. Thank you.
Good evening. As a young woman in today's society, I know firsthand how we are impacted by our experiences, environment, and social media. It has been through my own experiences that I engage in my obligations to fostering a healthy mind, body, and community. My name is Allison Arnold, and I'm a junior at City High School. Growing up, I've been exposed to nearly every social issue and political event, in addition to continually striving for perfection and searching for the answers to all the world's problems. Feeling as if I have always been an adult trapped inside a child's body, who would have known that all of my perfectionistic traits were eating away at my soul, hiding the depression and anxiety that consumed me. Last year at this time, I was a patient at Forest View Hospital, diagnosed with severe depression and anorexia nervosa. For me, my struggles of finding all of the solutions and overextending myself pushed me into the downward spiral of self-deprivation and abuse. Society glorifies perfection in every aspect of our lives, whether it's being valedictorian, becoming homecoming queen, being the football star, or having the best body. This makes everybody subject to society's evils. With all of the pressures of today's society, it is vital that we all have the opportunities and role models to learn from. Hosting Naomi Wolf, a major advocate for social issues, shows GRCC's commitment to fostering a generation of powerful and responsible citizens. Recovery is not easy, and I can tell you that everyone still struggles. Whether or not they've been like me and tagged behind their mom to every community event and still have a 4.0 GPA. I now stand here stronger than ever as a young woman for change to prove how we can overcome any obstacles so that we can spend our time and talent to help others. Young Women for Change is a philanthropic group funded by the Michigan Women's Foundation that gives grants to organizations that improve the conditions for women and girls. We cannot achieve and sustain change around us if we do not love ourselves from within, and that is where the change begins. Speaking of opportunities, I would like to invite you all to the viewing of the documentary Misrepresentation that is being hosted by our group Young Women for Change of Kent County, which is next Thursday, March 22nd, in the Calkin Science Center at GRCC at 7 p.m. This video focuses on how women are negatively portrayed in the media and society. It is now my pleasure to introduce Miss Marianne Lessert, Professor of English at the Grand Rapids Community College.
Thank you, Allison. Reading Naomi Wolf's bio, you can find out that she graduated from Yale, that she studied at Oxford University as a Rhodes Scholar, and that she's also the co-founder of two activist organizations, the Woodhull Institute, which mentors young women into leadership positions, and the American Freedom Campaign, a citizens organization to promote and restore democracy. But what I'd like to talk about tonight is her writing, specifically a few prominent books. Writing is an act of imagination, an act of bearing witness. Writing becomes activism when it inspires readers to make powerful connections. In 1991, with The Beauty Myth, Naomi Wolf drew connections between powerful diet, cosmetics, surgery, and pornography industries that were systematically chipping away at a woman's sense of self, at the same time that radical feminists of the 70s were opening educational, economic, and cultural doors, if not breaking ceilings, for women and men of the 80s, 90s, and beyond. In 2007, with The End of America, Letter of Warning to a Young Patriot, Wolf researched what she calls historical echoes, Connections between World War II era legislative tactics and propaganda employed by Hitler, Mussolini, Stalin, with present-day America. A blueprint, as she calls it. 10 steps that all democracies take when moving toward a fascist or totalitarian state. She followed up with Give Me Liberty, a handbook for American revolutionaries, a sort of how-to for readers inspired to protect the ideals of a democratic society. When I teach with Naomi Wolf's writing, I try to emphasize the connections she makes between powerful industries and a political climate that thrives on isolation and division.
It's on, okay.
Connections that might be good for us to make tonight. For to miss these connections would be a failure of imagination and empathy. A failure that Wolf would say cosmetics, pornography, and defense industries want us to make. What connections might there be between the war on terror and the war on women? And why are current media and political discussions saturated with the language of war? Can you imagine being that 12-year-old girl, or maybe by now an 8-year-old girl, who begins to despise her own healthy desire to eat because her media-enhanced world is filled with images of pink lingerie on a size 2 or size 0 model? Can you imagine being that same 12-year-old girl, hearing on her hometown radio station and seeing posted all over Facebook that to be an educated young female law student asserting her right to full access to birth control means she must bear the words slut and prostitute? How about knowing that that girl's male middle school peers are being increasingly targeted by internet pornography and its purposeful confusion with sexuality? Heavy stuff. Tough to look at, tough to admit. Which is all the more reason our guest tonight won't shy away. Please join me in welcoming author and activist Naomi Wolf.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Wow. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. And if I step away, can you still hear me? Yes. And it's an honor to be here. I have only arrived in Grand Rapids very recently, and I've only met a handful of students, but if you travel around as I do a lot and speak on various college campuses, I've already mentioned this tonight, you can tell right away what kind of community it is from the energy that the young people have and how they express themselves. And I can feel that young people here, I mean, every community has challenges, but I can feel that this is a campus where students are supported and heard, and feel that they are entitled to speak. And yes, round of applause, by all means. You should be proud of that. It's not an easy thing to find or support. It's really rare and precious. And I also just want to say I kind of lost my virginity tonight, belatedly, because I went to my first General Assembly for Occupy, and I was only there for a few minutes, but I got it. It is also a very precious and special thing, and we'll get into this later in the talk, but I've been having quite a sort of vigorous back and forth with Occupy since I was arrested, and since I've been trying to kind of get them to do media and get them to sort of get their message out more assertively and so on. But I will be gentler now because I get the love. It doesn't mean I don't want you to do media, but that's another conversation. All right, so tonight what I'm going to do is talk about the beauty myth, but I'm also going to connect it, as you heard, to kind of bigger and in some ways scarier things or more urgent things that are going on right now. Not that the beauty myth isn't urgent, but I really do see these forms of control of our minds and our hearts and our spirits as really on a spectrum. And so this is the first night I'm teasing out these connections, but I see already some of you are nodding, so obviously you too, see that these things are all connected. Who decides who owns our sense of self? Who decides where we get our strength from? So I want to start by telling a little joke about revolution. Once upon a time, there was a revolution, and 3 of the revolutionaries were caught and charged with treason and taken to be beheaded. These were 2 men and 1 woman. So the first revolutionary was taken to the guillotine, and he was asked by the headsman, how do you want to die, facing up or facing down? And he thought for a minute, and he said, I'll face down. So the headsman pulled the string, and nothing happened. And the crowd went wild. It's a miracle, they said. God has intervened. Set this guy free. They set him free. Second revolutionary was asked, how do you want to die, facing up or facing down? He thought for a minute, and he said, I'll face down. So the headsman pulled the string. Nothing happened. The crowd went crazy. It's a miracle. Set this guy free. They set him free. The third revolutionary was taken to the guillotine, and she was asked, how do you want to die? She thought for a minute, and she said, I'll face up. So the headsman pulled the string, and nothing happened. She said, I think I see what the problem is. So this, of course, is a joke about how even the best of revolutions can go astray when you get it? When we begin to internalize the attitudes that we're fighting. And the thing about being a woman in the advanced West is that you're not going to be constrained the way women are in many, many other countries by laws, by economic privations in the way that women are in the developing world. The way you're going to be constrained is through ideology, through what many people have called a backlash. So what's amazing about women's history, and I wonder if we can get a little bit more light up on the audience so I can see people's faces a little better. What's amazing about women's history is that you'll see very consistently that when women make a great leap forward in terms of access to education, in terms of legal rights, in terms of having an influence in the culture around them, there is a backlash. There's a counter-reaction. So I'm studying the 19th century right now. Huge push forward, suffragists, first big feminist wave in the West. That's when the angel in the house ideal became popular, thank you, where a proper lady, middle-class lady, was not supposed to speak up or engage in politics or touch, quote-unquote, the master's tools, money, the marketplace, the vote, and so on. You saw again in the 20s, there was this great leap forward because women got the vote in this country. In Britain, it happened in 1919. And then a new ideology appeared with a new ideal. And interestingly, this took a different physical shape than women had had before. And the new ideal was a flapper, right? Boyish, no breasts, no hips. Dieting became something that women did in large numbers for the first time ever in the West. You fast forward again to 1965, and who here knows what happened for women in America in 1965 in terms of a big breakthrough, technology? Exactly, the birth control pill. So, I'm sorry, could I ask you to move a little bit because I'm afraid of kicking you in the head inadvertently. I'm sorry. It's my clumsiness. You're perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you. The birth control pill was introduced, and so women had the ability to control their reproductive lives. So who, again, appeared as a beauty ideal, very surprisingly, that year? Twiggy, thank you. And many of you are too young to know who Twiggy is, but again, compared to the Marilyn Monroe voluptuous film stars of the 50s, Twiggy was the first truly anorexic-looking fashion model. Stick thin. So, again, this sort of obsessive ideology that Allison spoke about so movingly entered Western women's minds really assertively for the first time, because in order to look like Twiggy, you have to do a lot of very, very unnatural things if you're most women. So now let's talk about the ideal, and the ideal that is beamed at women in particular, the physical ideal, from magazines, from advertisements, from websites increasingly, the perfect woman, according to advertisers, according to Victoria's Secret. What does the perfect woman look like? Is she tall or short? Thank you. Is she voluptuous or very slim? Slim. I'm getting to the voluptuous part. Is she flat-chested or does she have really big breasts? Really big breasts. And do they kind of hover in space, defying gravity? Like sort of zeppelins, right? Right. So and how often does nature make really thin women with really big breasts, let alone that defy gravity, right? We know about this. Okay, never. So she's probably been surgically altered. Is she young or old? Very young. Is she white or a woman of color? Overwhelmingly white. Is she blonde or dark-haired, generally? Blonde, usually fair. So here let's call her Barbie. Does she have stretch marks? Does she have laugh lines? Does she have opinions? So there's Barbie, and Barbie is everywhere. Barbie is like the wallpaper. You cannot escape Barbie. And wherever you go in the world, I've given this talk all over the world, and every audience, East or West, Muslim, Christian, doesn't matter. Everyone identifies the ideal the same way, because the ideal is now global. So there's Barbie. Now, why does Barbie look like that? There are so many women in the world who look like all kinds of different ways. And so many men in the world are in love with women who look all kinds of different ways. Sexual attraction is very subjective. But here's Barbie, and Barbie looks very, very uniform. Now, the beauty myth is this. The beauty myth tells you that Barbie looks that way because that way of looking is a natural ideal, like it just transcends cultural conditions. It's sexual, and it's healthy. And so, it's about being reproductively successful. So the thing about this, and this is how you know it's an ideology, whenever you're told something is this way and you can't question it, right? Or if you question it, there's something wrong with you, you're dealing with an ideology, right? White man's burden, that's an ideology. We have to be in Afghanistan just because, that's an ideology. I won't detour. So we are told you can't really ask questions about why Barbie looks that way. She just does, and it's about nature, it's about fertility, it's about men. Don't have an issue. Or if you have an issue, it's because you don't measure up. But in fact, that is a lie. I will walk you through how Barbie got to look that way, and it turns out that it doesn't have to do with male desires. It doesn't have to do with nature. It doesn't have to do with a transcendent cultural ideal. It doesn't have to do with health or sexuality. It has to do with commerce and with this backlash that I've described. So why did an ideology that was so unattainable show up everywhere right now? In my mother's youth, there was another ideology that middle-class women were obsessed with, and it had nothing to do with Barbie, or not that much. It had to do with housework. Can you believe it? Betty Friedan called that the feminine mystique. And women really were, middle-class women really were expected to be preoccupied, to have ecstatic responses to scouring the kitchen floor to a high gloss. There was a whole belief system about you're not perfect if you've got dust on your floor. You're not perfect if you don't greet your husband at the end of the day with a 4-course meal and the house spotless. No one really cares that much about that anymore, right? That's how you know it's an ideology. It can fall apart and life keeps going. But women were really preoccupied with that. Why? The feminine mystique arose after women had been in the workforce during World War II. And they liked making money, they liked the autonomy. When men came back from the war, society needed to push women back into the home to give men their jobs back, or there would have been social unrest. So that's why that ideology developed. So let's fast forward. Why are women today bombarded with this completely unattainable ideal? Because if you weren't, you would be the most noisy, disruptive, idealistic, ambitious, powerful, assertive young women ever to walk the planet. Because you inherit the gains of the women's movement, you're growing up in a developed country in which, most of your basic physical needs are met, and because nothing would stop you, especially if you're educated. So, again, social unrest. So the backlash is, let's create an ideology that forces young women especially to be preoccupied with fitting into this ideal so that they won't be preoccupied with who's ripping off billions of dollars from mortgage holders. Let's look into that. Or what about these wars of choice all over the world that Congress is being told they don't have a right to vote on anymore? What about that? Or I want to see the books for these cities in Michigan where we're told we can't have democracy anymore. What about that? All right, so there's another push apart from this ideological backlash to make Twiggy look the way she does. And that has to do, as I said, with commerce. 3 powerful industries that mediate and in some ways censor the media that you see and consume. Number 1 is the $300 million dieting industry. Now, I really support health and well-being, but the dieting industry is 95% ineffective. 95% of dieters gain the weight back because it's not about health and well-being. It's about restricted calorie eating. And yet, if you're selling a 95% ineffectual product, how are you going to make sure that you have a market? $300 million, major industry. You make sure that women never get to see women of all shapes and sizes in the mainstream media. How do you do that? I will tell you. When you're watching daytime television, you'll often notice that and daytime television means aimed at women. There will be a segment on, oh my gosh, summer's coming, bikini season, we're disgusting. Let's talk about rolling out that new diet. And then the ad that follows it will be for Jenny Craig or for Weight Watchers or for some other major dieting industry product. I can tell you that producers of daytime talk shows aimed at women are under strict orders not to book women of all shapes and sizes as guests, no matter how interesting they are. A producer of the most popular TV show aimed at women told me that they were actually told not to book women oversized 10 or 12 because the advertisers don't like it. And these are women who are heroines in the community, who have amazing stories, who would be natural subjects for their viewers, who look like that, by the way. The average woman in this country is size 14, I believe, to relate to. They're not allowed to book them. Why? Because if you never get to see women who are not size 0 or size 2 held up as role models in the media, it's easier to make you feel so bad about yourself if you're a healthy body weight for you but not that tiny that you will buy a 95% ineffectual product. That's why Barbie is so thin. I talked about Barbie's breasts, right? Floating in space. So many young women now are growing up with, I call it the official breast, because you never get to see breasts of all shapes and sizes, just like women come in all shapes and sizes. Their breasts come in all shapes and sizes. So if you're a 12 or 15 or 16-year-old girl growing up in this culture and you look like a woman, you've spent years and years seeing Victoria's Secret models or even exposed to pornography, because that's how kids learn about sex these days, from internet porn. There it is, it's everywhere. And all these women are surgically augmented. So then they look at themselves in the mirror and they think, what's wrong with me? There's something terribly wrong with me. Cosmetic surgery, breast implants are the fastest growing medical specialty. And girls as young as 16 are being given breast implants by their parents for graduation, which I think is craziness, but there we are. There's a lot that you're not told about this procedure or these procedures. I believe in women being, or men being free to do whatever they want to their faces and bodies, but I believe in informed consent. 30 to 70% of breast implants harden to the texture of golf balls and need to be reoperated on. Every 10 years, you're supposed to have the implants out. They are now telling people. They didn't tell them the first time around. So this is not news to me, but it's not news to me not because I'm a doctor or a scientist. I'm an English major. It's not news to me because I did minimal reporting in 1991 when I was writing The Beauty Myth, and I saw that even though Vogue and Cosmo and, 17 practically, were promoting all these procedures, but especially breast implants, as if they had no side effects or risks, right? They would say they had risks, but not the percentage. They wouldn't say you've got a 30 to 70% chance of these things rupturing in your body. I actually looked at medical journals, and I saw that the doctors who were implanting these in women's bodies were buying insurance and ordering in multiples. The insurance paid for all the ones that ruptured, and they ordered in multiples because they knew that most of them would have to be replaced because they would rupture. Now, what are they rupturing? Silicone. I don't even need to get into this. It's too gross. You've heard about it. But silicone is causing autoimmune disorders. It's causing, chronic illnesses in women now. And in Britain and all over Europe, there's something called PIP implants, where they implanted women not just with medical-grade silicone, but industrial-grade silicone. So now this is ending up in people's brains and in their lymph nodes, right? Now, if I'm an English major and I could tell that it's not a good idea to put an industrial product in the equivalent of a baggie inside someone's body, right, then the fact that hundreds of thousands of women by now all over the world have been duped into having these surgeries because they have not been told the risks or the outcomes is really a kind of medical fraud on a massive scale. And the media has colluded with it. But again, those advertisers, if you look at the back of women's magazines, cosmetic surgery, cosmetic surgery, cosmetic surgery, that pays the rent for women's magazines. So they're not going to run the hard-hitting investigative piece telling you the real risks and dangers. And again, you're never going to see a model without surgically augmented breasts in a revealing image because there is too much vested interest in cosmetic surgeons making sure you feel weird or inadequate if you look like a perfectly healthy, normal woman. Yeah, the third influence is the cosmetics industry, a multi-million dollar industry. The numbers vary. I think cosmetics are fun and great, but I also, again, don't believe in ripping people off. A big part of the market is selling women anti-aging creams, where for $150 you can get like zebra placenta, lotion that, changes the cellular structure of the skin. These are real, the second half is a real quote. Now, nothing changes the cellular structure of the skin. If it does, it's a drug, and it's regulated by the FDA. So anything you get over the counter that's telling you it will do anything is lying. But this is a giant industry. So again, why do you never see older women in magazines whose faces have not been airbrushed? of lines. You never see them. If you ever see a movie star in her 40s or 50s in real life, you're going to be shocked because every image is so heavily airbrushed. Why? Is there something grotesque about older women's faces, or is it, yes, you know where I'm going, the cosmetics manufacturers do not want Vogue and Cosmo or anyone to show you what a real 50-year-old woman's face looks like, because otherwise they can't sell something that does nothing for $150 an ounce. So all of those pressures shape what Barbie looks like. Now, very briefly, you know, the ideology says Barbie, the ideal looks like this because it's healthy. Let's look at that. 30 years ago, the average fashion model weighed 8% less than the average woman. Does someone want to guess how much less the average fashion model weighs today? 33% less. That's correct. And it's not as if women have expanded by 33% in 30 years. The fashion model's weight has dropped. And to get that weight, you need to go on a calorie-restricted diet. And the average weight loss diet is still 1,200 calories a day. Now, I did some research and found that in World War II, or after World War II, Dutch women in war-torn Holland were considered to be starving, or in a state of semi-starvation, and international aid organizations were airlifting nutrition to them. The aid organizations established that they were in a state of semi-starvation because they were taking in 1,200 calories a day. And what's striking from images of Dutch women at that time is how chic they look by modern standards. So to be so thin for your natural body weight, most women have to go on a calorie-restricted diet. Now, the big insight I had in the beauty myth is that it is dieting that causes anorexia that causes women to go crazy. At the time I wrote it, it was understood the opposite way. It was anorexia and bulimia were seen as mental illnesses, that women were crazy, and then they developed, and that led them to calorie restriction. It's not what happened. I'll tell you my story. I was a perfectly normal, healthy 13-year-old girl when Bobby Salen at my Hebrew school poked me in the stomach one day and said, "Watch it, Wolf." I always say Bobby Salen as if that's sort of cathartic, but anyway, this will get back to him someday. So I did what any 13-year-old girl would do. I immediately went home and looked at my mother's Cosmo and went on a low-calorie diet. Well, it worked. Within 2 weeks, I had lost all my, probably 10 pounds. Within a month, I could no longer eat normally. I could only eat in a very obsessive, minimalist way. And within 3 months, I couldn't think clearly. I couldn't think about boys or about the state of the world or about rebellion or any of the things teenage girls are supposed to be thinking about, or girls, or anything. All I could think about was food. My whole world mentally narrowed to what the scale said and what I was going to eat that day. Within a year, I'm 5'4". Within a year, I weighed 83 pounds, and my doctor said he could feel my spine through my stomach. And thank God for that doctor, because he, very early for the understanding of this illness, said, if you don't eat, you will die. And so I did the hardest thing a woman can do in some ways in this culture. I made myself eat and gain weight. Within, a month, I was eating normally. Within 2 months, my head had cleared. I could think clearly again. So my experience was that calorie restriction led to obsession, led to anorexia. And then I looked at the science, and I saw that indeed, calorie restriction leads to obsession, leads to anorexia, leads to bulimia. And there are so many, there were so many young women I met at Yale, where I was an undergraduate, who were so bright and so gifted, but whose whole world was about how much did that muffin set me back, or running around and around the treadmill, or the, what is it called, exercise grounds in circles. And then I realized This ideal is so thin so that the most talented and idealistic young women in the world will do the things that they try to do to lose the weight they try to lose, so that their minds will be narrowed, will be obsessed, so that they will be drugged in a way with this preoccupation. The ideal is also represented to us as sexual, and it's very hard to turn away from something that's represented as holding the key to sexual intimacy and love. It's a mistake I think feminism has made in the past, trying to pretend it doesn't matter. It matters. And yet, let's look at the sexuality of that ideal. It's very interesting to me that and now I'm just going to talk about heterosexuality, not to be exclusive, just to focus on that and then, add to it as we go along. But that's the representation of the ideal is a heterosexual model. Women are told this is what men want. It's really interesting to me the data that shows that if you offer men, heterosexual men, a range of female body shapes, they choose body shapes that are heavier and curvier than the anorexic ideal. And when you look at science, this is not surprising, because what do women lose when they lose the subcutaneous fat they need to lose to look like Barbie? I can't really hear you. Virility, the equivalent of virility. That's a beautiful phrase. No one ever said that. The equivalent of virility, they lose their libido. That's exactly right. There should be a word for that. I can't come up with it off the cuff, but they lose their mojo. They lose their lust. They lose their desire. They can't have orgasms if they're too thin. And you know what else they can't do if they're too thin? They can't have babies. Exactly right. Your sex hormones are regulated by your subcutaneous fat layer. And so if you lose too much of it, you stop ovulating, you lose your period. A lot of anorexics are not menstruating, and you lose your fertility. So how sexy is that? There's an epidemic of infertility in this country, and very often this correlates to women with low body weight, exercise fixations, or eating disorders. And I want to talk about the last thing. So have that donut, give your lover a treat. I hope I haven't just messed up the funding for the Diversity Center, but do it in a respectful and, supportive and, egalitarian relationship, ideally. The last thing we're told is that this ideal is natural. And if you look at different cultures before the colonization of Vogue around the world, you'll see that cultures had all kinds of different beauty ideals. In a lot of West African countries, women worry if they're too thin because a very heavy-set body type is the ideal. In other African cultures, it's the males who display sexually and engage in beauty pageants. This is actually one, I don't want to overstate, it's one tribe, but I'm very intrigued by them. And the women are like, oh, he's cute, I'll check that out. And in the animal kingdom, it's the males who display and the females who sexually select. But again, is it natural to have an ideal of beauty that doesn't exist in time, and that is, clearly, if you look at ideals throughout history and in different places, has varied so much. So what I'm going to say to transition to the revolution thing, because this is all about revolution, is that now you know, right? And now it's not even that these ideals are airbrushed. They're literally computer generated. So that, they'll take a picture of a model, but they'll elongate her neck, they'll elongate her legs, they'll make the breasts grow. It's all done with mirrors and computer graphics, not mirrors, that's an expression. So now Kate Winslet will try to go to the public and say, those are not my legs on the cover of Entertainment Weekly. Don't compare yourself to me, because they made that up. But it's the cover of Entertainment Weekly that speaks louder than even the person who's ostensibly, the basis of this image. So I feel like knowing these things is very empowering, because then you can make a choice. It's not going to happen all at once, but it will give you some freedom. So I would say to you, if you're female, one of the antidotes to this, now I'm going to switch into kind of a spiritual mode. Bear with me, I'm from California. There is in every woman, I am completely convinced, no matter how beaten down she feels by these images, a part of her that she knows is perfect and beautiful. And I call that the goddess. I feel like every woman has this fragment of awareness of the goddess in her. And it is just radiant with self-respect and radiant with self-love. And knows that it deserves to be treated well, that she deserves to be treated well. She deserves love. She deserves admiration. She deserves not to be verbally abused, to be cherished, to be sexually pleased and looked after, respected sexually, not degraded. And, you know, when women are in touch with the goddess, they really shine. And I've seen them shine in every body shape, every age, every racial background. They just glow and sparkle. And they're beautiful. So I would urge you, when you leave here, reconnect to the goddess. You know where she is. The whole culture tries to stifle her. And do everything you can every day to nurture and feed her. And increasingly, she will tell you what she needs. She will say, "Did you hear that nasty comment? You don't need to be near these people. Did that man just say that to you? You can get up out of the bed. You don't need to be with someone more than you need your self-respect." You know, and more the goddess will strengthen you. And just love and self-love will come out of you. So this is not a linear thing I'm saying, it's intuitive, but don't take my word for it, just try it. Because her intuition is perfect. And she takes care of you. Now let me extend this to be inclusive of both genders or all genders who are here in the room. It is a time in history when we all have to touch the divine spark in ourselves. And it exists just as much in men as it does in women. It's really, really critical. And this is not a religious position I'm taking. It's almost a civic position. As you heard in the introduction, I've been writing about the threats to democracy in America and around the world. And our beloved, this is not unrelated, our beloved Constitution is being dismantled right by right. And our beloved system of checks and balances is being broken apart. And people at the highest levels are engaging in fraud, theft, and corruption. And when people are trying to protest it, they're being viciously arrested, mistreated in prison, threatened and intimidated, their First Amendment rights taken away. We're joining the rest of the world in that we're seeing that we need to fight for our democracy. We need to fight for our freedom. So what I want to say to you is this fight, you know, these things are connected, as I said earlier. There are forces aimed at young men in this room, just like there are forces aimed at young women. There are forces aimed at all of us that are trying to distract us, trying to get us focused on reality TV, trying to numb us out, to, you know, addict us, to be preoccupied with how do I get more stuff? How do I measure up? You know, where's the next channel? How do I keep treading water so that we won't notice the theft, the fraud, the poisoning of our atmosphere, so that we won't have time or energy to say, wait a minute, show me the books. Wait a minute, I have a First Amendment right of freedom of assembly. Wait a minute, you want to grope me in the TSA line? What about the Fourth Amendment? You know, wait a minute, what about my right to speak? What about my right to have my vote counted accurately? What about my right to be represented in these cities in Michigan where people have decided that you don't get to run your communities anymore? So the effort to distract and drug you is very multifaceted. So I know it's time to take questions, but I just wanted to leave you all with this. the founders, like right now, you're kind of given the message that your only job as citizens is to vote and once in a while to read the newspaper. This is nonsense. The founders of this country didn't want the citizens of this country to passively hand over the struggle to defend the Constitution to a bunch of constitutional lawyers. They didn't mean to hand over the governing of our communities to professional politicians or bankers or professional bureaucrats. They didn't intend for you to be silenced and only pundits in newspapers or on Fox TV or CNN to have opinions and have debates. They intended you to defend the Constitution. They intended you to lead your communities and make the laws and pass the laws and look at the laws and change the laws if they were wrong. They told you that if government was not working to represent the people, it was not your right, it was your duty to rise up against the government. And I just want to stress, because so many people aren't taught civics anymore, what I just said isn't some radical, crazy thing. That's in the Declaration of Independence. Jefferson said that, all right? So don't blame me. And what we're going through right now is a time of great crisis but great hope, where people around the world are waking up to realizing that what unites us is more than what divides us, and that all we want is peace and democracy. And then there are these powerful interests globally that are trying to suppress this around the world. So your job, it's so important for you to be awake, right? It's so important for you to stop worrying about all of these pressures bearing down on you to distract you and silence you and muffle you, and to think about your critical mind and to take responsibility for your own actions and see yourselves in a new light as agents of change, as agents of your own change. It's a time when everyone, I believe, has to start seeing themselves as authorities, as journalists, as community leaders, as politicians, in the sense of leading political movements, as advocates, as lobbyists, as campaigners, right? As producers of media. Each of us has to do that. You have to do that. So to leave here with that in your heart, and that's about seeing that spark of the divine in you, which means everyone is equal, everyone is full of dignity and has a right to speak and lead. It means that you need to get in the habit of seeing yourselves as authorities, as agents of change. So the beauty of this is that the mind is malleable, and that when you start to say, hey, I'm going to lead, I'm going to step up, the brain changes so that you feel less and less passive, more and more hopeful and active. That's why movements for citizen empowerment are addictive in a good way, right? It's the opposite of the addiction of the reality shows and the consumerism. So I'm asking you to leave here cherishing those feelings in yourselves as men, as women, as citizens, cherishing them and cherishing them in each other. And if you do that, there is no force on earth, history shows, that can stop you. If you do that, you will change the world, and I am excited to see what you will do. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. So I understand we can have questions and answers. Yes? I wonder if let's practice this thing that I suggested. Do you want to come up to, wonderful, thank you. Hi. I'm grateful to be here today. I saw you speak at Grand Valley State. I think that the mic is not on. But I'm grateful to be here as well. Here, I wonder if I can give you my mic somehow until we can get the, do you want to speak into that?
Yeah, I'm grateful to be here tonight. I saw you speak at Grand Valley State University when I was a student, and back in 1991, so it's great to be here. Yeah, and I'm now a counselor, and I work with people like you and I. We're struggling with their lives, and I hear you talking about a macro level change, And I think that that's really important and valuable. But I also wonder, how can I help parents of 12 and 13-year-old girls exactly talking about the Victoria's Secret pink model campaigns, and what can we do on a small scale level to help those parents help their middle school age children?
Right, that's such a good question. What's your name?
Raimi.
Raimi, thank you. Thank you so much. Can everyone hear me if I am here? So Raimi asked, I think you all heard her, what we can do to help those 12 and 13-year-old girls. So a couple of things. I would say there are a lot of really great media literacy programs, and Allison talked about a screening they're having of misrepresentation, and I think that it's perfectly appropriate as a documentary for 12 and 13-year-old girls, so you can do that just to help them think critically about it. You can't protect them. I think that the impulse to protect them is hopeless. What I do believe is that you inoculate them with critical thinking, but there's something else really crazy that really works. And this is my, I love my, well, I'm sort of hesitating. Okay, I said the brain is malleable, and they're really finding with neuroscience that when you say positive things about yourself, the brain creates new synapses and you think positive things. A number one reason girls that age get anorexia and bulimia is that and I'm not blaming the mothers, but the mothers talk critically about themselves in front of the daughters. So even if the mother's saying, you're beautiful, but saying about herself, oh, I hate my thighs, I can't believe I just ate that, or whatever, the daughter feels vulnerable and is vulnerable. So I would really urge all of us, especially women, to speak positively about ourselves in the presence of 12 and 13-year-old girls and younger. And I'll tell a quick anecdote. I did this throughout my daughter's upbringing, even when I didn't really feel like it. I'm like, oh, I love this, I love that about myself. Ridiculous. But it's effective because you start to believe it, And so I'd done this for years. And I was on an interview with a woman reporter on the radio, and she said, which is a very socially acceptable thing to say, well, of course we all hate something about our bodies. And I just blurted out, I don't. And there was silence. And I could hear women in 3 states thinking, and then she whispered, I don't either. So I realized that all that affirmation that I had done for my daughter's sake had really brought me to the state where I just blurted it out because I felt it, So it seems stupid, but affirmations in their presence inoculates them and inoculates you to some extent. Yes, please. Thank you for the work you're doing, Raimi.
And thank you for coming tonight. My name is Kat, and all the cells of my body are beautiful and healthy.
All right. That's nice. That's lovely. I'll repeat, all the cells of my body are beautiful and healthy?
And they
Good
are
for
all
you.
working to maximize my health. But
I'm
here
so happy to
tonight,
hear that.
because I wanted to hear what you think about what's going on right now with all of these people in the Tea Party or other opportunistic people who got in power in 2010 because some of us didn't vote against the Tea Party people. And there are all these problems now with the rights for women's contraception and all those probes they want to do for women who require abortions or request them.
I don't mean to cut you off. I'm just mindful that there may be a lot of questions, so I think I have the
I
gist.
would like your response to that. Also, I just want to tell people here that at 1 o'clock this Friday, in front of the Clear, whatever the radio station is.
Clear Channel?
Thank you. We're protesting Rush Limbaugh.
All right.
That's 77 Monroe Center. Be there. Bring a sign, bring a letter.
All right. Thank you so much for those important questions. So I guess what I would preface my answer by saying is that I really think that we need to be post-partisan in America right now. I'd like to say forever. Thank you. And so I personally would encourage us to rethink this framing of it's the Tea Party or it's the Democrats or it's the Republicans. They all suck, and But flipping that around, in every community, with every background, people you think have nothing in common with you, there are decent, wonderful people who share your core values if you listen to them and approach your debates with civility, which is another precious thing that we have too rarely. So what I encourage people to do is tune out Washington. Tune out those fake debates. They're all bought and paid for by actually lobbyists funding think tanks. And bring the debates right back into your hometown, into Grand Rapids. There's this wonderful organization that will help you host a town meeting. So you can talk to the people in the Tea Party here in Grand Rapids, if you're Occupy here in Grand Rapids, or whatever the differences are, and you can form coalitions. The beautiful thing about coalitions is, the way democracy is supposed to work, we should be able to form a gigantic coalition across every political party, say to defend the Constitution, and then fight about policies that we disagree on. Just forming a coalition doesn't mean you're sworn to blood loyalty about everything in the agenda, right? But we've become so afraid of differences and so not trusting civil debate. There's something else I encourage with civil debate across differences, which is never to engage in a personal attack, and always to try to be open to the possibility that other people's motivations are as pure as yours, even if you hate their policy outcomes. Now to the transvaginal probe, which is the second part of your question. There is no question that there is a rash of legislation, and I don't think this is from a grassroots level. I don't think your average Tea Party person who's just normal citizen is lying awake nights thinking, how do I get the transvaginal probe legislation passed, right? It's coming from the top. But the left and Democrats are no better than Republicans about these terrible civil liberties issues. Who signed the National Defense Authorization Act into law? It was Barack Obama, right? Which he now says, I have the power to take any of you and hold you without charge or trial forever. Okay, so these pressures are bigger than any one president or any one political party. They are institutional pressures. They have to do with money. All right, the transvaginal probe. There is a push to invade women's bodies again, but I see it now as a continuum of the groping and molestation by the TSA, and on a continuum with the vaginal exams in Tahrir Square punishing women protesters. It's a way for the state to say, you have no bodily integrity, you have to do what I want, I can invade you at will, and to me it's a Fourth Amendment issue rather than a partisan issue. So, fight back if you object to it by all means. That doesn't mean I'm gonna say that pro-life people and pro-choice people can't be equally idealistic and care equally about women and children, because I think they can. And do. Big silence, thoughtful silence, round of applause. It's a complicated, that's another answer. I owe you a better answer, but that's shorthand for this answer. Yes, please.
The enlightenment of all women to the power of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Good men, good women.
And thank you. What was your question?
Oh. You want this?
Not necessarily. Thank you very much. I mean, I want to look at it. I just have to be a little worried about security. So,
I understand.
thank you, thank you, thank you for coming. All right. Thank you. Hi.
My name is Jeremiah Bannister, and my question has to do with what do we do as members of the media? I graduated with a journalism degree, and I'm in radio. What do we do about what you were talking about earlier? And I think it's quite obvious to anybody who watches TV that when you turn on the television, women across the board fit a certain mold. In a day and age of socialized media, how do we communicate to the powers that be, so to speak, to inform them that not only is it terribly unrealistic, but it's immoral what they're doing?
Right.
And that how do we empower the women in this room, all shapes and sizes, all colors, how do we empower them to speak in a unified voice to the people who make those decisions to say, enough is enough, it's our turn?
Right.
That's my question.
It's a beautiful question. I'm just smiling because I think you'll get lots of phone numbers before the evening is over. I'm teasing.
My wife and children.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I have 4. I brought two young girls, and it's an honor. So it's a pleasure.
You're being a good dad, good partner. That's wonderful. Thank you. And by the way, thank you. Is it okay that I'm down here with you instead of up on the stage? Thank you. This relates to what you were saying, Rainey, because you were saying, what do we do? This dad, by caring about this, is going to be inoculating his daughters. It's really important what the dads do as well. So that's beautiful, and there's something concrete you can do. I like to first say, forget the powers that be in the media, in a way, because we're in a place where we can migrate all of our cultural energy away from big media, away from big politics, and start creating our own media. I like that better. That said, they do inhabit a lot of our real estate in our brain. So there's something very concrete. Boycotts are super effective. You're seeing it with Rush Limbaugh right now. Consumer boycotts are even more effective. Women spend 70 cents of every consumer dollar. They are the advertiser's dream. So when you write a mass campaign, and you can go to petitions.com to do this, and you send a letter to a magazine and copy the advertisers and say, if you don't open up these images, I'm going to take my dollar elsewhere, Urban Outfitters, or whatever it is, Clarins. Each letter, women's magazine editors tell me to tell you this because they get fired if they tell you directly, but they count each letter as representing 10,000 readers. So that is very, very, very effective. But even more, I'd like women and men to put their energy into creating their own media. And that can also disempower, like they need our eyeballs. And if we take our eyeballs elsewhere, they are disempowered. Yeah. Thank you so much. Hi.
I read your book in 1991 and stopped wearing makeup and high heels, as you can tell. It gave me a lot more time during the day to do things. The thing I want to say is to everybody is that I would like Congress and the president and whoever decides we're going to go to war to send my 18-year-old daughter's son to war. They are really a citizen and a viable human being. To have to go through what a woman goes through when she has to get an abortion or wants to get an abortion, cross state lines, have to pay $1,000, ask their mother. That's exactly what I would like to see happen.
So thank you. I didn't quite understand. You'd like people who are
No,
Congress
who decide that they want to send my child to war.
to experience what women have to experience to
Exactly
get an
right.
abortion. That's an approach.
That we wouldn't have wars anymore.
I see. You're saying before they can declare war, they
Yes.
have to jump through the hoops
That's
that women jump
exactly
through to get an
What
abortion.
I would have to do to get an abortion.
That is really interesting. I think, creative brainstorming. I don't know how you legislate that, but
Well, they can legislate it for me.
Right.
I'm an entity just like the United States was my thinking, and I'm a citizen. So
Yes.
they can tell me what to do then. Before they send my child off to war,
yes.
they should have to do that.
I think you're definitely onto something. Right now there's a culture of impunity in Washington, and there's no oversight, and there's no penalties, and there's no scrutiny. I would add something a little more, I don't want to say more practical, but more immediate.
I know it's not going to happen.
No, it's good. It's like the beauty of citizens turning to each other for solutions is that some things are initially kind of nuts, but then you work it out, and then well, maybe we can't make them go through that, but what other barriers and hurdles can we legitimately put in place if we, the people, don't want them to go to war with no consent from us, which is how the system is supposed to work.
Right.
So there is a hurdle that you can put in place if you don't like the way your country's being governed. And again, they don't want me to tell you this, but when you do a protest, if you don't show the person you're protesting, especially if they're an elected representative, that you are registered voters, and that especially you vote in congressional elections, which no one votes in, then it doesn't matter what you do. You could march from here to eternity, and it doesn't matter. But if you show up with your list of registered voters in their district, and you show that they know, by the way, they're public records, they'll know if your name is on the list of people who vote in congressional elections. And if you say to your representative, all of you have the right to call your representative's office and speak to the district rep and ask for a meeting, right? And they have to give it to you. Sooner or later, they have to give it to you. You go to the meeting with a list of as few as 30 registered voters in the district, and you say, I can get these people to get out the vote for you in the next election if you XYZ, pass this bill, sponsor this bill, oppose this bill, or I can look elsewhere and take my 30 registered voters to get out the vote for someone else who's more responsive to us. You have turned into a lobbyist, and you have as much power as the people writing them the big checks. Why? I was a political consultant for Gore 2000, not working on wardrobe, that was the RNC's urban legend, working on messaging and women's issues. All that money that's flowing to these campaigns is only going to buy ads to change your mind, especially in Michigan, right? So if you show up with your registered voters list and say, I can get these people to get out the vote for you, it's not hard. Drive old people to the polls, put up some signs, right? One consultant said it's like you've dropped a neutron bomb. You are so powerful. So I've been saying and saying and saying this to Occupy, because Occupy, they're putting all of us in a very dangerous situation. They've touched the third rail. They're about to move in on where the financial bodies are buried, but they're not organizing politically. And so that's very dangerous, because people are going to start getting shot when they're protesting or disappeared. And I don't mean to alarm you, but unfortunately every single thing I predicted in End of America has come true. So that is the next step, unless we organize. And right now, you can put, if you want to sponsor a bill that says that people have to jump through various hurdles before they write another blank check for war, you can call your district rep and you can sign it. Who wants to be in charge of keeping the registered voters list from this meeting? I will. Thank you. You're an angel. You're an angel. What's your name? I love you.
Cameron Ackerman. There's a word for the opposite of virility for women. It's malibrity.
Woo, I like that. Thank you, Cameron. So where do people find you to give you their information about being registered voters?
We currently occupy this church Wednesdays and Sundays. Sundays at 2 p.m., Wednesdays at 6 p.m. You're all welcome.
All right.
I want to see all of you here.
So Cameron, how do people contact you if they can't come but they want to be on your list of registered voters?
Facebook. I think...
And if they're over 50?
Well, I think we should all get off Facebook when they become publicly traded, but that's my own opinion.
In the meantime, if they want to be on your list?
Judge? Wikispaces. We have a Wikispace.
So you guys so this is why I tear my hair out. I love you guys so much. You have to learn how to talk to people who are not your generational peers. I don't know what Wikispace is.
You mentioned that you think we should become post-partisan. Occupy is supposed to be nonpartisan. I like your terminology better, post-partisan.
You're welcome to it. But how do we find you if we don't know what Wikispace is? Sorry to be so persistent.
Everything is on the internet right now. See, we need more on-the-ground people talking to people.
Does anyone have a phone number or an email address that we can give to all these people in case they want to help change the world here in Grand Rapids, Michigan?
Judge, I think maybe they left.
Go to Occupy Grand Rapids?
Yeah,
Okay, let's not get into a fight now because we don't have much time, but this is exactly the circle I go through again and again with Occupy. Serious people, reporters, people who are busy aren't going to go to your website page. They don't even know how to do that. They just want a number to call or an email to send their information to. Why make it so hard?
I will make a Gmail. That is OccupyGRMI.
You are so good. Thank you. Did you get that? Occupy. Wait, was it Occupy?
OccupyGRMI.
MI. Is that one sequence?
We'll make it all.
Occupy GRMI. Grand Rapids, Michigan. Wonderful. Round of applause. He stepped up. He did it. Thank you. Yes.
My question now.
Yes.
I wonder if you could speak to how massive media conglomerations have pornography subsidiaries and how they're related to human trafficking.
Oh, I wish that you would give me the links I need because I'm writing a chapter on this, and I know there must be some connection. I've noticed that, a lot of people need to leave, it seems, so maybe I should take a couple more questions and then wrap it up. But it seems like there's got to be...
on Twitter and tweet back, please.
I don't know how to do that. I have someone tweeting for me.
Not that hard. Well,
Yeah, but I have 2 kids, I have a job, I'm self-employed.
Twitter can take up your lifetime.
Just tell me, okay, email me the links, okay, info@naomiwolf.org.
Okay.
But I believe that he is onto something. Pornography is bigger than conventional film and music combined. And I believe that it's kind of been eased into the culture very, very easily with no opposition and no barriers. And I'm a free speech absolutist, but I do believe in keeping adult material away from kids. And so I believe that if you follow the money trail, you're going to find what Cameron said, which is that there are huge profits being made from pornography that fund the conventional entertainment industry. And I'll seek out more of that, let you know. Gotta go. Okay, and how are we doing for time? I don't want to keep you against your will. Go ahead, sir.
I guess the question that I had, I hope I don't get lynched or nothing, but I'm a marketing major.
You're a what?
A marketing major.
Right.
And I was just kind of wondering, what kind of advice do you have for me or anyone else in here that is majoring in marketing and is going out into the world? I mean, it's kind of like a catch-22 because we all kind of want to work for,
Right.
Glamour or we want to work for those big companies.
Yeah, I appreciate your question, and it's a good one. I mean, I really think, great movements for change need people inside, kind of pushing the limits, and outside, putting pressure on institutions. And also, I want to say that even in mainstream media, there's a lot of space to do good things. There are a lot of articles, even in women's magazines, about women's health or financial stability or empowerment that wouldn't have been there 10 or 15 years ago. So I also want to say, not everybody is meant to be on the outside putting pressure. And I think that you should go ahead and, try your hardest to get a job doing what you want. And then when you're in there, you'll know in every situation what the limits are of how you can push a more open or a more creative approach. And I've met a lot of those people, and they exist, and they do a lot of good. So, I would respect that journey if you chose to take it. Just don't fall asleep, that's all I ask. Yeah, but go knock them dead,
We already have an email.
Yay! occupytogethergr@gmail.com. Round of applause for Occupy Grand Rapids. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Yes, go ahead, please.
Thanks for talking about the goddess. I noticed that I started hating myself so much when I had my son.
Oh.
And I also noticed that the goddess is kind of ferocious. I got really ferocious after that. So I've also noticed, I like that you draw these parallels between a closing society and the steps they take. But I've noticed that this war on women, there's a lot of hatred for us that's being legislated, that's even, I can feel it in the air.
Yeah,
it's hatred
coming back.
for us.
Yeah.
And not only are they're getting us to hate ourselves, but they're getting us to hate each other. There's a lot of female on female just animosity. And my question is this: why are they so afraid of us?
Haha. Well, you'll want to read my new book. That's a great question, and people have been trying to answer it forever. I want to step back again, just because I always try to, whenever there's a very polarized moment, try to step back and see if we can look at it with compassion and see what unites us. I don't think men hate women. I know you're not going there. I know you're not saying that. For people who might be new to feminism or who might need to hear a feminist say that, for the record. And I think there's such an important role for men to play in feminism. I know you're not saying that. I'm just saying it to have said it, because I mean it. That said, misogyny comes from some very deep roots very briefly. So one thing you're going to read in my new book, Vagina, a new biography, thank you. Again, I hope the Diversity Center is intact and on solid ground. It's a very scholarly, well-researched book full of positive, respectful, empowering messages, is that there is a strong brain-vagina connection neurologically, which means that when women are sexual in a healthy way, they get lots of dopamine. And what dopamine is the ultimate feminist hormone. It makes you focused, assertive, trust yourself, trust your judgments, be motivated, be goal-oriented. So when men realized that sexually empowered women could not be controlled, patriarchy arose to find all kinds of ways to control them through religion, through chastity belts, through shaming them so that they would do it to themselves, essentially not be assertive. And then it's a vicious cycle. You know, the more subordinated women are, the less dopamine they get, the more passive they are, the more depressed they are, etc. I think also Freud was onto something. You know, women are the love object for heterosexual men. And to be honest, the vestigial child reptile brain would, lock up your love object in some moods, no matter who you are. There's that instinct to control the love object, so the love object doesn't abandon you. That said, these impulses, which are hardwired in human beings, get maximized by certain kinds of culture. And there's a lot of data to show that a really militarized culture, a really violent culture, a culture where the state is imprisoning people, pretty soon starts to sexualize that violence. And this is a universal, and again, neuroscience. Aggression and sexuality are adjacent to each other in the human brain. So if you see the state stripping Bradley Manning, what I said in an interview earlier is that in America, increasingly all of us are starting to be treated like brown people and black people, and all of us are starting to be treated like women. So when the state says, I have a right to grope you, the state is going to start to sexualize torture, the way you saw it at Bagram, or sexualize torture, the way you saw it at Abu Ghraib. And then you're going to start seeing this kind of titillated legislation. How far can we abuse women, with a state imprimatur behind it? You see it in every fascist culture, I'm sorry to say. So what do? We support the amygdala, which is the part of the brain, I beg your pardon, that's the bad part of the brain, that's the reptile brain. We support the neurocortex, the prefrontal neurocortex, thank you, which helps us reason and be logical, and be compassionate, think things through, and not be going on instinct, that is brutalized instinct. Yeah, yes?
Hi, how's it going?
Good.
I really agree with your stance on new media and how it empowers individuals, and it allows us to, like you said, kind of transcend, those normative type of boundaries like politics and media and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess my question is, looking ahead for the next 5 or 10 or 20 years, how can you see, normal people like ourselves using these tools to kind of change the status quo in terms of government and media?
That's such a great question. Did everyone hear the speaker?
Did you not really hear me too well?
Yeah, I think everyone heard you. No? Yes? Yes.
Okay.
So you probably have better ideas about this than I do because you grew up using these tools. So I'm excited. I guess I'm more interested in making sure that each of you knows that you can and should innovate and sign people up behind your vision, rather than dictating from my pre-internet perspective what it should look like. That said, if you want to help us, we're unveiling at the end of this month a globally scalable democracy-building website called dailyclout.com, which will use technology to aggregate the kinds of things that we were talking about, starting political campaigns, voter registration, scanning upcoming legislation to let people know what's going on in time to take action. But I think your ideas are where the action is really going to be.
Definitely, and I will follow you on Twitter.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I love that sentence. I will follow you on Twitter. It makes me feel so high tech. Go ahead.
Okay. I hate microphones, but
Are we okay for time? I just want to watch. Are we all right? You let me know when I should take one more question, okay? Go ahead, please.
Okay, so I feel like you have been making or hinting around these connections between basically the exploitation of women and its connection to capitalism. And you've said fascist government, or that we're approaching this a couple of times in your lecture today as well. But I'm confused as whether because you also say that we should work outside of the system to get what we need accomplished, like branching away from the powers that actually exploit us and marginalize us as women, as people of color. But then also you put an emphasis on voting and being a part of getting this change to happen through legislation. So I was wondering if you could be more clear.
Sure. Sure. Well, you're getting it exactly right. I'm saying both.
Okay.
And just to clarify, I don't assign the source of these ills to capitalism. Actually, no one likes to hear this in certain sort of subcultures of the left, but if you look at history, the most egalitarian societies have been advanced capitalist democracies with a strong social welfare net, like Sweden and Norway and Finland. So, and totalitarian countries are just as bad at controlling women and controlling human beings. I would rather be a woman in Stockholm than Beijing. So capitalism can be a force for good if it's properly regulated. And support like microlending is capitalism. I mean, women have been engaging in buying and selling to feed their families for millennia. There's nothing innately wrong with it. And I actually think the left has to get better at engaging with capitalism. That said, what we're seeing now is not capitalism. It's huge monopolies, huge megalopolies that crush competition. It's more like Mussolini's Italy, where you had a close alliance between fascist government and corporations. And I think this is the model you're seeing globally, that corporations are realizing it's easier to do business in a China than in a Britain or a United States, because you can get more profit out of situations where people have fewer rights. So that's the drive. I really want to distinguish that from capitalism. Okay, I am saying work inside and outside, and here's why. I study movements that open up democracies and open up human rights, not just crush them. And the really effective movements are always pincher movements. What do I mean by that? If you look at the civil rights movement, you had huge mass action and peaceful civil disobedience. But you also had Martin Luther King and the leaders, and there were leaders of that movement who were willing to meet with the president, sit down with the president, meet with legislators, set an agenda, negotiate. And so what you had was upheaval on the outside and people who were willing to broker change with gatekeepers and decision makers. It's very effective. Same thing with Gandhi, same thing with ACT UP, which is my new favorite model of an effective democracy movement. ACT UP had and I keep saying to Occupy, get ACT UP to train you. They were so good. They didn't have consensus. I'm a big non-believer in consensus. Consensus sucks. It never works. It has never, ever worked. It will derail any political movement it touches. It has never worked, will never work. That said, ACT UP ran very organized meetings. They had spokespeople. It's not the same as leaders in a hierarchical way. And what they did was they created huge civil unrest, very dramatic. They did things like bringing a dead body in a coffin of one of their leaders and bringing it to the Republican National campaign office, or throwing the ashes of their loved ones over the gate of the White House. Very disruptive. They put a condom around Jesse Helms' house, right? A giant condom. Laughter? Hello? Anyway, they were very disruptive peacefully, but they also had people being inside St. Vincent's when there was protest on the outside saying, look, I'll get rid of all these protesters if you meet these demands or if you negotiate them. And Mayor Bloomberg, when there was upheaval in the streets in New York, said, I will negotiate with these people, but there's no one to negotiate with. And that's real. You need someone to negotiate with when you've got huge upheaval on the outside. So that's what I want to say. Thank you very much for the good question.
We'll
Yeah.
take these last two questions.
Sure. Hi.
Going on the voting that you were talking about, got into a heated conversation with my friend yesterday. And
Can everyone hear you? Can everyone hear the speaker? Maybe speak up a little bit? Thank
yep,
you.
Sure. And we were talking about the voting system and how it's computerized, and with all the planting of the seeds and the legislation that's going through, or not even going through, just kind of getting put out there in the air, and just the whole system with the voting. I was wondering what your thoughts were with the whole computerized voting
Yeah,
system.
you're totally right. I mean, let me be clear. All of our institutions are highly corrupted at this point, but it's only holding them accountable that will uncorrupt them. Not, when people say, oh, we want to start a new Bill of Rights or a new system, it's like there's nothing wrong with the Bill of Rights. There's nothing wrong with our beautiful system of checks and balances if you make it work, right? Remember what Benjamin Franklin said? He was leaving where they were drafting the Bill of Rights, and a woman said, well, what's it going to be, a monarchy or a republic? And he said, a republic, madam, if you can keep it. So that's where we're at right now, right? We have to keep it. We have to keep it by taking it seriously and forcing it to work as it should. I do not trust any group of people to come up with some better idea than an advanced democracy. There is no better idea. That said, the voting system is corrupted. I think the NAACP has done something very clever, which is they went to the UN and they said, come observe our voting practices because there's so much corruption. So I would invite international scrutiny of our voting practices. I think we need a federal law to unify voting. We need to get rid of the electronic machines that are hackable, and, well, you know the story of Diebold, and go back to paper ballots. And I think we also need a system, I think this would be a great task for Occupy and the Tea Party, where if you go in to cast your vote, you also do a duplicate voluntarily and show it transparently so that there's a transparent record that's voluntary that will show if there's a huge discrepancy in the voting process. What do you think of that? All right, last question? Yeah. Hi.
I find that, generationally, with my generation, that so many people are willing to be stagnant and not passionate and not inquisitive and not asking questions and not willing to mobilize against so many of the things that you write about a lot in most of your books. And so I was just wondering if you have any tips for people who want to mobilize young people, especially young girls, to take action and things on the larger scale.
That is such a great question. Where do you think would be the most productive place to go from your experience?
I think that I find that teenagers need to be more aware of the news as it actually stands, not just as it is presented in the corporate media.
Mm-hmm.
And I am very interested in enhancing the true meaning of free press because we don't really have free press in America anymore.
Right. So it sounds like you're really interested in education and communication.
Yeah.
Is that right? That's wonderful. So then I would say, start a blog, do zines still exist? Is that still a thing? Occupy makes a zine. Maybe she could do the teen zine for Occupy or supported by Occupy. I think it would be fantastic to have a teenage platform to address these issues from a teenage perspective if one doesn't exist, and I'm not aware that one exists. So I think you should think about a name and get a friend. Here's what I love as an organizational thing. If you have any group of people, you hold a meeting, and now we have Cameron to organize it if he's willing. A list. Ooh, a beautiful paper list. I love that. I love that. Thank you. So you can also have meetings at people's houses where citizens show up. And then I encourage people to go around and say what they have and what they need. So you have a good idea, and you would say, this is my idea, and what I need is someone who can design a logo. And then I promise you, 2 phone calls away in any room of 30 people from different backgrounds is what everybody needs. and it's an incredible technique, and I urge you to try it. So you need someone to design your logo, and you need contributors, and you might want to pick up a copy of Strunk and White to review, grammar and punctuation, which I'm sure you're very good at, and go for it. And then I'm sure you know how to promote things on social media, and if you don't, the resources at Occupy will teach you.
Okay.
But well done. Do you have a name for it?
No, not yet, but it's just kind of a concept I've been thinking of.
Well, I know a young woman who's a very beautiful writer, and she's right over there. So Allison, meet, what's your name?
Sam.
Sam?
Sam, yep.
Excellent. And if there are other people who know teenage writers, activists, photographers, where should they contact you, Sam, for your new zine blog thing?
Facebook?
So now I don't want your parents to get mad at me if I encourage you to give your whole name out, so I won't.
No, it's okay.
No, don't do it. Don't do it. But let's see, could she create a Gmail address, which is not her personal address, where people can reach her? Okay, so teenactivistmagazine@gmail.com?
Sure.
No one probably has that. All right.
Yeah. Okay, awesome.
Okay, so we've started the new magazine, or she has, Sam has. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done. I look forward to seeing it. Thank you. All right, thank you all so much. This has been a wonderful evening, and I'll see you all who want to at the book signing. Thank you so much.